you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. I hope you all had a very nice Christmas, holiday season, Hanukkah, whatever you celebrated this holiday season. And I wish you all a very happy New Year. We will be doing a show on New Year's Eve in the afternoon because we will have another voter analysis model that we'll have to go over. So we're gonna have to go over some like key definitions here as we go through this. All right. And so if you're a local supporter, you got the PDF. This is the first one. All right. If you're not on locals, you didn't get the PDF, you're going to have to follow along in your head. Okay. Because join locals. What can I tell you? Right, Laura? All right. Peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. I'm going to have to look over to the screen because it's so much. It honestly is a lot for me to even remember. All right. The first model, because not every state has voter registration, we have no choice but to do inference on party registration. So when we do it nationally, obviously this is going to include some of those. All right. And a lot of those, frankly, as you see, if you're on locals, it's very accurate. As you know, if you've been on locals and you've been following this, Virginia was a very good example of how inference can catch changes in voter affiliation before registration can catch on. What do I mean by that? Last year, or it's been more typical, that this overall very broad that we're going to go over today, every all record, no strict matches, excluding only the dead and recent movers, that tends to lean Democratic. It is true that Democratic voter records are dirtier than Republican voter records. I'm sorry, but that is just a reality. That is a fact. All right? When you do more strict matches and you require that voter records have all of the information that a voter record needs to be legitimate, then that disappears. So overall, in this very wide casting net, it's going to be more pro-democratic. And last year, it was really around like D+6, sometimes a little bit more. It did fall to as low as D+4, but it wasn't stabilized around D+4. We did do one and released it when it was D+4 right before the election to try to show people, and we did that. That was a very large net. And we did that to explain to people. I mean, it wasn't as large of a net as this one, excuse me. I don't want to misspeak. We did that to explain to people that there was a snowball's chance in hell that there was going to be an electorate like we saw modeled in the polls. That was not going to happen, and it did not. In Virginia, like I said, a very good example. Some of these polls that were showing McAuliffe still holding on to a lead, all right, modeled the electorate way too Democratic, and that was not going to happen. In 2020, Virginia was anywhere, because of an inference modeling, it was anywhere from D+4 to D+8. And we would expected it to like kind of stabilize at 8 if you looked at Joe Biden's margin. And we told you throughout this year, throughout 2021, leading up to the gubernatorial election, that it was very clear that Virginia was swinging to the right. Now, I was skeptical. How much could it swing? Virginia was one of only a very few number of battleground states, or states overall, to continue to move toward Democrats under Donald Trump. Mid-Atlantic battleground states, southern battleground states outside of Georgia, but, you know, if you want to call Texas one, whatever. North Carolina, Florida, and then, you know, the Midwest, even all the way out to some states outside of Colorado and New Mexico in the West, and of course, California, but Nevada, Arizona, that looked more Democratic on paper, seemed to be more, you know, modeled out to be more Republican. In Virginia, it actually came out to just about R+1 in the very last, just under R+1 in the very last model that we released. The electorate we modeled in our polling was about an even to D+1, D+2. We told you Terry McAuliffe needed more than D+2 to win. And that was true. So it's accurate, is my point. How do we infer? We infer by donations, activities. Hundreds and hundreds of data attributes that are attached to your voter record. It's a little scary. That tell us whether or not you lean to the right or to the left, outside of party registration. There's something that I found in this, even the broad net, even the big net, the broadcast, you know, it's big net, that I found really significant, which is that Democrats are usually inferred higher than Republicans. And that is not the case this year. Why does that matter? Because voter registration is static. People don't run to their Secretary of State designated office, whether it's a supervisor of elections in Florida or a county registrar in Arizona. They don't run right to these places and say, you know what? Every time I don't like a party, maybe I thought I was a Democrat last year. I voted for Joe Biden. I'm going to, register as a Democrat now. And now I don't like Joe Biden or Democrats or what they're doing. So I'm going to race down there again, and I'm going to change my voter registration to Republican or independent. That doesn't happen. We know these changes take place when we call people or we email them or text them or whatever, and we're taking these surveys. And we know someone is a Democrat or a registered independent or registered Democrat, and they say, you know what? I'm a Republican. What do you identify as? And it's a Democrat, we know. I'm an independent. That's when we can see something is happening below the surface, all right? Under the era of Donald Trump, let me just tell you, what really happened, which I think the results bore out, is that Donald Trump cannibalized his independent vote from 16, and he turned many of those independents into Republicans, and that is why the independent vote appeared to have swung pretty substantially towards the Democrats, when in fact it really didn't. There were just less right-leaning independents in the electorate. All right? Did Democrats get less conservative? No, it's just look at a state like Pennsylvania. You have Democrats that were all, and North Carolina, by the way. Democrats that vote Republican at the state level under Donald Trump. I mean, at the federal level under someone like a Donald Trump. But return to voting Democrat, or prior to Trump, they would do this, and return to voting Democrat. This time under Trump, they said, no, I'm just a Republican and I'm sticking with it. So he pulled some of those Democrats away. So it made it appear that Donald Trump did not win as much as the Democratic vote as he did in 16. That's not true. He just took those Democratic voters. It is impossible to see some of these registration changes over time, over longer durations of time. It's impossible in some of these counties without that transpiring. In Florida, that never happened. He just ate his independent vote. He just registered them as Republicans, new people that were coming in, Venezuelans, Cubans, even Mexicans. And he just turned them into Republicans, and they are now just Republicans, which is why Democrats lost their affiliation, their identification, party registration edge for the first time since 1972, when Florida started tracking voter registration statistics by party. And that is why Democrats are in the position they're in now. A state like North Carolina, however, you are starting now to see out in the rural western, mountain regions of Appalachia. And then, of course, in eastern North Carolina, you have some areas like Pitt, where there was high numbers of Democratic registrations that are now just being converted. And they're not going back. But there are large numbers of Democrats who still vote Republican at the presidential level in a state like North Carolina, which is how Donald Trump won it twice. Because if you look on paper, there's no reason North Carolina should be a Republican state. But that's if you're, I was going to say simpleton. That's if you're superficial and you're like all these other gurus and you really don't know what the hell you're talking about. All right, so let's get into this. All right. With this very large net that we threw out into the voter file universe to cast, we excluded only deceased, which is really suspected to be deceased. And how do we know that? Going back to these fake fact checkers. We know that because we match their first name, last name. There are really three. I only use three. Degrees of confidence. First name, last name, middle name or initial, address, and date of birth. Ladies and gentlemen, there is almost no way for us to mistake a certain voter for someone else, like they were trying to tell you when we were going over this after the 2020, talking about integrity. The idea that somebody has the same first and last name, even middle initial, fine, I'll concede, and it's possible. We didn't count those people unless they had birthdays and addresses. Do you have any idea what it would take, how many clerical errors it would take to make that an excuse? That's ridiculous.
Well, they were mad because you were eating away at Biden's.
We don't. The idea that's what they thought was going to happen.
I know.
You can't really say that for certainty until you call the person, because or the state gives you the ballot, which they refuse to do.
What does that say?
So that's where we were at. All right. So and then moving into change of address flags, these are people who filed a change of address request. We know that they really are no longer eligible to vote in their state, in the state that's, of record. They may have moved out and they're perfectly eligible to vote in another state, but they are no longer eligible to vote under that address in that state. They don't reside there anymore. All right. And we exclude them because they're ineligible. And every pollster, that's the default. That's an industry standard default. When any pollster goes to the voter file to pull lists, to start calling people, the query is defaulted to exclude. And that's all we left this report to do. This is the first one. And they will be out, like another one will be out tomorrow. Then another one will be out Friday. Locals will go over the one that's out tomorrow. Okay? We're going to do, finally, a midterm electorate. Okay? A general election and a midterm electorate. And really, I called it a general election model. But what did I really just try to do? I tried to start to get a little bit more strict with, do these records have other columns of information? Now, I'm talking like a database. So my database people out there know what I'm talking about. Does each row have certain columns empty? They are excluded. Let me put it that way. So if do you have an address on record, yet you're supposed to be an absentee ballot? But if you're supposed to be an AB voter, but your address is missing, right? That's not possible, of course. So, this is all stuff, by the way, that states should be doing, but they don't. And when we talk about suspected deceased and change of address, I always say this and have been saying this, said it for weeks leading up to 2020 when we talked about the potential to exploit what we were doing. They are always behind. So if I tell you there are this many change of address flags in a certain area, you can rest assured that there are more. There are more that should be listed as change of addresses, but the person, moved and didn't do it, or, the state didn't log it yet. These are always delayed statistics when it comes to excluding people who should not be on the list, which is why it really does require a constant effort. The Voting Right, the Voter Act of 1993, everyone is interpreting it differently, state by state. It's just a mess. And even states that do try to do a good job, which requires them to maintain their voter rolls, they don't do it enough. Some of ours are updated bi-weekly. Every single state is updated monthly. There is no reason that states should not be doing this as well. This was the low-hanging fruit. Mm-hmm. A voter is not going to come in and request an absentee ballot if they're gone, but they're still listed as active and eligible to vote. Well, that's a perfect ballot to grab. As a matter of fact, why don't we just unsolicited mail them all out and see how many people return them? Let's enlist the public to be our personal ballot harvesters for illegal ballots. If Valerie Weiner, whatever, was willing to give up her job at the NSA, how many people are willing to take the risk to do that? All right, so this is the very broad net, and I'm trying to give you this in context. So when I read you the number, and locals you already know, but when I read you the number, you don't have a heart attack. Let me give him the query parameters.
I just want you to also clearly state how you do change of address and temporary change of address also, like how you decipher.
Well, right, because these are permanent change of address flags. Yes. So this is somebody saying, I have moved out of state, post office, please note this. Mm-hmm. All right. So temporary that's a great question, because some people leave, but they're still eligible to vote in that area. That's not included in this. And that's a very good question. But let me give them all. I'm not going to read every single damn state. When we do these parameters, obviously there's the geotag, there's certain demographics. Sometimes there are modelings, which we'll go over later in the week a lot more. But basically every single state, District of Columbia, every state that's eligible to cast a vote in a presidential or general election. Okay. Demographics, the only thing in this parameter is deceased equals true, obviously. Exclude deceased, which is what true is, a Boolean, right? Mm-hmm. And then change of address flag equals exclude movers, change of address, recent COAs. All right. All records, no matching. In other words, just give it to me if they're missing an address. Just give it to me if you think that this is a maiden name of someone who has been married now and should not even be on the record anymore. Just give it to me. Come on. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the number, if you don't exclude the deceased and change of address flag, is millions upon millions upon millions higher. That's how many we're talking about. Some states have 1 million on their own. All right, unique individuals. This is what this returned from the database. Unique individuals. 197,778,400. 137 million people voted in the 2016 election. 145 and plus, almost 150, right? Something like that, voted in 2020. There are about 50 million records more than the total turnout in 2020. If you don't exclude change of address and the deceased, it goes about to 214 million. Insane, right? Insane. Unique households, however, 137,134,637. Now, look, Laura and I are registered voters. We live in the same household. There's nothing screwy about that at all. I mean, there's something screwy about how many records are just missing addresses, but there's nothing screwy about there obviously being more unique individuals in households, obviously, right? Anybody who's read a census understands there are more people to a single home. And some of them have kids who are eligible to vote, or some of
That's
them
right.
have an uncle
Yes.
living with them, a grandparent, whatever it may be. Unique addresses, 103,332,259. Unique landlines, 51,346,148. So just so you know, out of this entire total pool, if you were to just do a landline survey, you would only be able, if everything was perfect, to reach 1 out of 4 people. Obviously, no mode is perfect, including mobile. Are you ready? 86,146,707. No mode by phone reaches the electorate by itself sufficiently. No mode by phone reaches the electorate itself sufficient. Doesn't happen. Unique emails, 77,159,633. That has been a pretty dramatic increase in about 5 years. It is telling you that there's almost parity now between emails and cell phones. So the gold standard is going to be overtaken soon. I really do believe that. Most people will say, no, don't bother me by phone. Contact me by email. It's happening already. Let's just do the baseline stuff here, okay? And let me pull up my full report. But, all right, you know what? I could have killed PDFs.
Yeah.
I could have, yeah, let's kill PDF.
Because you're going to crash.
Let's kill QuickTime Player. I got all this crap. Guys, this is the way I am. I'm never going to get any better at it. Let's kill messages. Let's kill mail. Just in case I go to share something with you guys, which I will. The second half of the show is going to be a little bit risque. Okay. I'm just going to bring up something I know you probably shouldn't, but I don't really give a damn. All right. Going to it.
The truth is what matters.
The truth is what matters. That's what I care about.
And if we're not here for the truth, then what are we
Then what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah. Amen.
Should go play with my kids or something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All right. Overall, party by party. Everyone who can't everyone who can't wait. No, you can wait. Democrat total known is known that we know 100%. We can tell you they are Democrats is about 23%. All right. The inference for Democrats is about 14%. So overall, the electorate is 37 in this model. Again, guys, 197 million plus records. It's 37% Democrat. Okay? Why am I smiling? Just bear with me. Republican known is a lot lower, but it's higher than last year by about 2.5%. Is about 17.4%. But inference is 15.6. All right. All in all, though, when you add up every single one with tens and everything, which we always do, and actually hundredths in this model, we go to the hundredths because when you're dealing with such large numbers, tens of really doesn't get there. You really do need the 100. Anyway, is about 33% together. So Democrat 37 with an inference of 14%. Republican 33 with an inference of 16% out of a model that we're talking about is 197 million plus records. Now, some of the report we can see and we can lean people. It doesn't put it into that category. There are keys in that report locals that you may not recognize. For instance, G obviously is Green Party, right? L is Libertarian. I is Independent. And when they say independent, they mean they're actually registered in the independent party some states offer. All right. But there's a lot of other ones that are a lot less known. What does A mean? What does B mean? What does C mean? I'll put the key up on locals for you, okay? Because there's so many, I don't want to go over them here at one point. But, T, V, W. There are states like Utah where they have the United Utah Party and the American Independent Party. And they have pretty significant registrations. In Florida, they have the tax reform and the Constitution, and in New York, conservative is a designation. And some of these third-party designations have some pretty significant numbers in them. But we do know where some of them really should be non-party affiliated. All right. So overall, even though it's like 14 and change on the voter file, independent together that we know is truly non-party affiliated is about 24%. All right. And I know people are like, whoa, it's kind of low because, there's so many, look at Gallup and, independents. They're calling them, or they're sending out mail, or Gallup does mailing now too. And that's self identification. It's not what is your actual registration. All right. And third party is now, I always tell you, it's usually between 4 to 7, 5 to 7%. In this particular model, 6%. There's a difference here with the third party this year. There is a very good argument to make, if you believe the official total, there's a very good argument to make that this third party vote put Joe Biden barely over the edge in some of the states that he needed to beat Donald Trump in the Electoral College. This group, even more so than non-party affiliated voters, absolutely cannot stand Joe Biden right now. When we poll them, 65% will tell us they voted for Joe Biden, but 25% will tell us they approve of the job he's doing. That wasn't always the case. In the beginning, they were riding high on like a presidential honeymoon period. That's just the pattern we found. Now, that's why when we poll, we always give you party, which is Democrat, Republican, Independent / other, and then we give you party detail, which is Democrat, Republican, Independent, which is of course the non-party affiliated, non-affiliated voter. And then the second, that / other category is third party, or sometimes we'll label it as something else or something like that. All right. That's those voters. And they're 6% right now in this model. 24% plus 6% is 30%. So the overall partisan split here is 37, 33, 30. This is a D+4 with 197 million plus records in this model. There is no universe. Not in your the alternative one, some of these pollsters have created in their minds. There is no universe where a national electorate is going to be D+6 or more. Never going to happen. Just like I told them in Virginia. There is no D+5, D+6, D+7. That was nuts.
Never ever.
Not going to happen. And in fact, it did not happen. Why does the inference matter? Because some of these people inferring to be Republican should really be in the independent other category. There's data attributes in their file that are telling us they donated to a Republican cause. They gave to Donald Trump's super PAC. Is a great one. That may be a tip-off.
Just a little bit.
They supported Second Amendment issues plus a pro-life cause.
Mm-hmm.
And on and on. I mean, I can't go through I can't go through every single one of them, but these are people who are boosting the Republican raw number. And really, when you poll them, it's possible they may say they're an independent.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these swings with independents are they're not artificial. They're just misleading. They're just more complicated than some of the other fake gurus would have you believe. All right. Going on, if you want to look at some of this stuff, gender, once upon a time, we were looking at like a 53, 47, 54, 50, 46, 53, 47. There are a lot of, there are people who refuse to put their gender on their voter record now. I kid you not. Okay. So that's why they don't add up perfectly. But we're looking at generally about a let's just call it 52.5 to 47.5 gender split. So when you see these national polls and they're like 53-47, what they're trying to tell you is women are going to vote at higher rates than they normally do. Okay. 54-46 is like nuts. All right. In states like, especially on a case by case basis with some of these states, there are some states like Wisconsin where men actually vote at much higher rates. All right. So, just keep an eye on that. You can go down all you want on the income. Well, locals can. But you can see it's kind of funny. There are a little less unknowns this year with income brackets. And it looks like the 100 plus category got a little bit bigger. The 200 plus grew by about 200 to 250 grew by about 0.5%. The 250 plus went from like 2.8 to 3.75 or 2 point something, right? And then in the middle, some of that really deflated. One of the ones that really took me off guard was 60 to 65,000. Fell from almost 4.5% to 3.1. And then you see other categories like 10,000 to 15,000 rise from like 1.5% to 3.3. So what I'm saying is I'm seeing like a gap here. Like there's that term the left loves to use. I'm seeing a wealth gap here, and that is without a doubt in line or consistent with some of the economic data we have seen since the pandemic started, that this pandemic really has helped the rich to get richer. And mitigation efforts crushed the working person all for the benefit of like the Bezoses, right? Jeff Bezos and others like him. So the continued success of Amazon came at the expense of somebody else, the average American family or the average American worker or the average American business owner that made similar products that could no longer offer them, had to close their doors, but Amazon didn't have to. All right. Even delivery services for food while the local restaurants had to go out of business. Right. So these are moguls who own these companies, and they are doing much better, while the person who knows slice gyros for a living, his company had to go out, so it sucks, but that's reality.
Yes.
All right, let's the marital status stuff is really cool. Of course, you don't put marital status, you don't have to on there's a lot of these indicators have big chunks of unknowns, and followers by now you understand that these are things that do not go on the voter record. We're pulling them out of other sources. All right. And we're attaching them to their voter record in one giant database where we cross consumer information, other information with the voters' information. Right? And by the way, how do we do that? By matching their first name, last name, middle initial, birthday, and address.
Silly you. How dare you do
It's
your
like
job
the
right?
rest of the industry does. Fake ass PolitiFact. All right. Inferred ethnicity. So you will see, of course, there are a lot of the unknown category in this. It gets bloated because you have so many Hispanics who don't identify as Hispanic. They identify as white. All right. Even some mixed race people who don't like to identify as one of or. So you'll see like African Americans are just like under 9% when we know they're voting nationally. It's really closer to 12 or 13. It is true, however, despite the fake arguments from Stacey Abrams and the fake media, Black voters vote at higher rates than their overall population. They are over. Are you ready? Let me break everybody's brain right now. They are overrepresented in the voting electorate as a share of the voting eligible population. Oh my God!
Holy moly.
But what about Jim Crow 2.0 and the need for the Supreme Court dismantled the Voting Rights Act? No. In fact, African Americans are the only ones to enjoy multi-decade, especially since the 90s, increase in turnout rates and participation rates. No other race votes at the rates that they do, consistent as they do. They are overrepresented in the electorate. Caucasian, over 66%. When we poll, you will notice that generally our polling will get between 69 to 74 even, because we know that sometimes there are some Hispanic voters who do not identify, but we know who they are. So if they identify as Hispanic, and a lot of people ask me all the time, you need to separate this Hispanic question. No, we need to mimic the census. All right. We're doing what the census does. And if we did that, then you're asking me to basically, you do the one thing that I absolutely hate to do, which is make assumptions about the electorate. So you're going to ask me to make assumptions about whether or not that percentage of people who, identify as white and Hispanic is accurate. And I hate making assumptions. I really just like the electorate to tell me what's going on. I don't want to tell it what's going on. Because what happens if it comes in at 14%? Am I to weight it down? What if it comes in at 4%? And that doesn't look good enough to you or anybody? Am I to weight up? Which I hate weighting up. You can weight down because that means you oversampled. Weighting up means you did not sample enough. That's just a personal philosophy. If you need to weight up, you screwed up. That's how I feel. I'm serious. And you know that, Laura.
No, I do. No, but
she sees me do it all the time. I'd rather waste more money. And it's not wasting to me. A client pays me a certain amount, I think is a profit margin. I already know that profit margin. If I feel like a group is not adequately represented, I will give up my profit margin, or at least some of it, to go back out and get those groups. Because I'm not going to just say, well, you know what? Hispanic men, it's really 42, 41%, the Hispanic sample. I think I'll just wait up for men. No, I think I'll go out and get more men.
That's called cheating and lying.
I'm telling you, man.
No bueno.
You cannot extrapolate to compensate for inadequate sampling. And you cannot wait up because you screwed up. Bigger is better in sampling world. Ladies and gentlemen. All right. Okay. So Hispanics around 9%. And unknown is about 13%. All right. Which is really that's actually pretty normal. When we do these other models, you'll see some of these unknowns in basic demographics, not all sorts of the other ones where we're going out and really pulling a lot of information, but some of these basic, and this is inferred ethnicity, pretty damn close, right? So if you're wondering how off party may be, right, with the inference, look at how close we can get on race. And there are a lot more data attributes to tell us what kind of a voter you are as far as party than there are to tell us about race, your race, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you filled out an application on something and you had to give your race or you did it. And that's where we would get that from. But there are multiple behaviors, multiple contributions, multiple things that you could do that tip off you're a Democrat. You're a Republican, right? Not too many Republicans out there giving a Greenpeace, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, of course it happens, but you know what I mean. And by the way, you're not, the inference model will not take somebody who just donated to Obamacare, for instance, or donated to a healthcare cause. I mean, I should say that's not good enough to tell us that you're a Democrat. There has to be more. So it's not some loosey-goosey kind of inference. It's not. Where African Americans, I went over that. Asians, about 3%. I think some of that unknown definitely should be in Asians. But it's close. 3% is pretty close to 4%, which is where we typically find Asians to be when we poll. I do think, again, African Americans are overrepresented, but 12% is probably right on the money. 11 to 13. The truth is, though, they tend to come in around 13.5. which means they're overrepresented because they're not 13.5% of the overall voting eligible population. They're not. Caucasians, that's pretty good because the term is not white, it's Caucasian, right? Which definitely isolates people who are not of a certain Hispanic descent, obviously. Right? Now, there's one, of course, that could be called Caucasian, of course. Spaniard under our Latino detail. But this is an attempt to just say how many at least are just straight up white voters, you know? And that's why, again, when you see some of these national polls where the white vote is like 65, 67%, ladies and gentlemen, that's crazy. And I'm talking about nationally. It's just not true. There are a lot of Hispanic voters we know are Hispanic, and they'll just tell us they're white. So I don't know does the exit pollster just like change their answer for them?
I think they do, honestly.
You know what? She wrote white. She's definitely Latina to me. Okay. Education is always interesting. It's one of the harder ones to infer, of course. And you have such a small amount that it's interesting because it's one of the easier ones to know, right? So whether you attended a vocational school or a technical school, that's actually one of the easier things to figure out. Because A, you're absent from certain records, and then B, some trade skills, there are a lot of crossover attributes that tell us whether or not you did that. It's kind of, I don't know, it's so different from when you and I were growing up. I don't date myself. Right?
Don't you dare.
1,336,739 or less than 1%. Just over half. I mean, or 2/3 of a percent. 0.68. That is incredibly small compared to when we were growing up. I was gonna give a number. Completed high school, 17.5. That means only completed high school. Just so it doesn't mean completed high school, and then also that's included in the college. It's not. Religion is always one of my favorites. And by the way, graduate school is about 4.5, 4.5, 4.41 technically. But there's a large unknown, 55.5% unknown, because it's one of the more difficult ones. But it's always a good exercise, so we do it. And typically, census has some good stuff on that. I'm starting to wonder whether or not we're going to start to see a drop off in college graduates soon, because we have all of our migration is not educated. The largest growing, I don't know if you guys saw, but domestic U.S. population did not grow at all this year. Or actually, what the census showed is that that's the trend. We just aren't growing. It is international migration, immigration, legal and otherwise, that is accounting for whatever population growth we have. So this idea that there's some boom of white graduated Democratic voters just doesn't make sense. I mean, they could make white voters less conservative, but they're like Barnes always says, they're always going to vote. Their numbers are there. They're not growing. You know what I mean? They're not growing. So especially if you look at their mid and long-term prospects, it's not bad to be the party of the majority racial group in the party, plus the party of the growing working minority class. So mid to long term, and I hate the demographics is destiny model, because if that was true, Joe Biden would have won Florida handily. But that theory it's debunked now in my opinion. If that was true, South Texas would be clearly deep blue. If that was true, Arizona would be a 8-point Democratic state by now. If that was true, Nevada would not be this close. It's just not, because of a little thing called political maturation. And that theory did not take that into consideration at all.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So it's not a bad thing for this is why I think this election for Republicans is really going to be
Something.
it's pivotal to their future. Because if they go back to being the party of like plutocrats and technocrats, Mitt Romney, they will never appeal to the growing sector or the growing block of voters who is actually the future. The future. That's the word. They will be attempting to reappeal to a block of voters that is shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
It simply doesn't make sense. And maybe it sounds like it makes sense if you're a very narrow-minded, short-term thinker. 2 years.
Yeah.
Maybe 4. I'm talking about 10. I'm talking about 8, 10, 12, and beyond. Mid to long term. Which would you rather be? Still the party of the majority, that wins by a lot, the largest voting group in the country, and is also appealing to the fastest growing voting bloc in the country? Or would you rather be someone who wins right now, appealing to neither, turning off both for the foreseeable future? This is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You need to, this is why it's so important this year. You need to think about it in terms of this. Really, you do. And a little bit less superficial. These things are never, the answers to these questions are never simple. It's not Occam. When it comes to politics, it's not Occam's razor or political coalitions. You better throw Occam's razor out the damn window because it's far more complicated than that.
Sure is.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And if you think otherwise, you're just
you really that's why you're wrong every 2 years, every 4 years, every 6 years, and that's why you have a trouble keeping up. That's why you think in 2016 Hillsborough County was the bellwether county in Florida. Like, you're that far behind. That's why by the time 2018 and 20 roll around, you're still saying whoever carries Pinellas is going to carry the state. Like, you're 2 years behind, 4 years behind every damn time. You never catch up. You sound like you're smart, but you're left behind. All right, so this election, Republicans will have to decide what direction they're going to move in, and that really matters, because if they do go back, if they buckle to Gallup and their approval ratings for Kevin McCarthy and Chief Justice Roberts, you're doomed, man. You're doomed. Because you'll find no home with anyone anymore.
True story.
You're doomed. I'm sorry. It's the truth. All right. Age. Fascinating, but we're not going through. Religion is interesting. Big number of unknowns. 29.85. Oh, did I get evangelical on this one? Oh, you know what? I'll reprint it and I'll get it or maybe that was one of the reasons there was like a problem with it returning results. We had it would have been out already, but we had a bunch of issues. Like, it was telling us this will take this long. This will take that. I'm like, oh man, this is going to take way too long. So I just wanted to get, the stuff. I was trying to give you turnout scores. Yeah. I was trying to give you turnout probability scores too for each group. And it was just like, yeah, sure. You want to wait 5 days? So anyway, it's interesting that 44.3% off the bat are known Protestants. All right. When there's still 29.9 unknown. Why do I think that's interesting? We consistently find that without certain methods that we use to reach voters, others don't reach. Protestants are always underrepresented. We consistently find that. And then when we do well with our regional weights, and I mean more granular geo weight, not even weights, but targets. Like, do we have enough from this? Do we have adequate sample sizes here, there, and everywhere? When we do that, and then, everybody's represented and we apply the weights, then Protestants go up. Mm-hmm. If you don't keep it fixed, you can't keep some of these. This is why I think some other pollsters are messing up. They're like waiting for something and not allowing that to impact the other variables. And I don't want to get too specific, but if you change region, you should impact the party, right?
Yeah.
If you change region, you should impact ideology. You should impact religion. Other things that aren't fixed, you should not be keeping fixed in your weights. And I can't help but to suspect they're not doing that.
And region does truly change per area.
Absolutely.
Somebody who is a Protestant in New Jersey
is
not the
very
same
different, right?
as Protestant in
Pound,
Florida.
pound,
right?
pound, pound.
End of story.
Pound, pound, pound.
So listen.
Pound, pound, pound.
Just listen to Rich.
Pound, pound, pound. But she's right. No, that's so
but
true.
it's true.
Even a Protestant who's in a metro suburb, who's not the same as a. So if you're looking at some of these groups, it's like people say, "Wow, what's the difference between some of these things?" Well, Virginia, predicting the electorate in Virginia, not only white, race, whatever, down to ideology, party, by religious affiliation, all of that. If you leave some of these variables fixed, these demographic weighting variables fixed, you'll never be able to predict it, because now you're telling the electorate what it's going to look like, instead of saying, all right, let's keep everything where it impacts each other. I'm trying not to do what you hate, which is like tell them what to do. All right, but I'm also trying to say in a way that people, like viewers, won't understand, which is that you can wait for a party and keep like age the same. You can wait for, that's not even, age isn't even a good example. Really, a good example is like waiting for region and keeping party the same.
Yeah.
That's problem, because if you do that, then urban Republicans could represent like 30% of the Republican vote. That's how raw data works sometimes. And that's stupid. It's stupid, right? What's that Australian guy from that Adam Sandler movie you love? That guy is so funny, man. He played a Delta guy in Black Hawk Down. It's stupid. You're so stupid. He's so funny. All right. But anyway, what does this tell us? It tells us, well, obviously there must be more Protestants than 45%, which is repeatedly what we see in exit polls. And even, I'll be honest, even in our own polling. Gallup said, well, this year they suggested, actually, we could be wrong. At least, that they showed that, because Protestants and other Christians, all right, how do you do that? Do you include the Church of Latter-day Saints in with that? Some people do, some people don't. We do not, by the way. Other Christian in a national poll, typically, we'll give that, but it depends where we're polling. Greek Orthodox is separate here from other Christian, Protestant, other Christian, right? But they're about, 0.2 of a percentage point. Not much, but it all adds up. Catholic has fallen. Why is that? Because Hispanics, who are ethnic Catholics, in some of the biggest Hispanic states like Texas and Florida, are converting to Protestantism. And we are not the only ones to find that. And I am telling you, if you don't think that had something to do with their change in vote preference in both those states, you're nuts. Because as Gallup has shown, religiosity in general, but religious affiliation is highly predictive of voting. And did the Catholic vote really swing to Joe Biden? Or did the Catholic vote 4 years ago get less conservative because they converted to Protestantism in two of the largest states in the country, with two of the largest populations outside of California in the country? It's a fantastic, I'll share it on social media. I wonder if there's a new one this year. There probably is. There's a fantastic survey that's conducted every year on the religious affiliation of Hispanics. It's and it's a staple for me, because I see what I see month after month polling, and I wonder, is this the case? Are they seeing this too? So at the end of the year, we get to, either realize whether or not it's confirming what we think we see, or it's in opposition to it. And then maybe why, if it is, maybe why is that? What could explain that? But honestly, in the last few years, it hasn't been an opposite. It has shown what we have suspected, which is that the longer ethnic Catholics stay here, the more likely they are to undergo political maturation. And one of the effects of political maturation is for ethnic Catholics is a conversion to Protestantism. Protestant.
Mhm.
It's just it's honestly, that's a pattern that we have identified that goes back to the 1800s with Irish Catholics. And for a while, I was wondering, why didn't Hispanics? Irish took a while to do it too, because they were very much part of the inner city kind of Tammany machines. They relied on them for jobs. They relied on the Democratic inner city machines for jobs like at the fire department, at the police department, at the postal services, for the federal government, all sorts of stuff like that. But as time moved on, that they could not stop that political maturation, and the immigration waves for that particular ethnic Catholic group stopped. So we did see those conversions go on. Italians did it the fastest. They were the fastest to undergo that conversion. And even though many of them, by the way, still, even if they did not convert, went through the political maturation process, and the end result was pretty much the same. But Hispanics, I don't know. I don't think I can prove it yet, but I'm gonna make the hypothesis here. I'm gonna offer a little theory, which is that the financial crisis hurt them. There was a new wave of Puerto Ricans in World War II. There was a wave of Puerto Ricans in World War II. They went through the process and then it came out on the other side. But then there were waves that came behind them that kind of hid the fact that prior generation did. And it's really, really interesting stuff. And then now in modern times, you have, especially with Mexicans, I think we saw that there were Mexican and other Hispanic detailed groups. They were going to go through this process and then got hit worse than anybody by the financial crisis under George W. Bush. Thank you, W. And they were not only got hurt economically, but resented the people who they believed were responsible for it. And time heals all wounds kind of thing. I'm serious. And now that it has gone on and things got better for them personally, they began to go through that. But there's almost no other explanation, ladies and gentlemen, because there was like a pause. Obama had 8 years.
Yes.
And for the first 4, it was just like, okay, almost have to throw them out the window because this group is decimated. Many of them even went back. I'm serious. And then 4 years later, you expect things to improve to the point where they feel it, their station feels it, and they just didn't.
Regress.
And there was like 2 years under the Trump administration from 17 to 18 where it just snapped on. The light, the switch just went on. And then you started to see rising participation rates, falling unemployment rates, rising income levels, home ownership levels, again, which is obviously the key to wealth creation, right? And then the conversions. It's almost like you could follow it. By the way, military enlistment used to be one of the strongest impacts on maturation. I don't know that that's the case anymore, because the military that we're comparing them to now doesn't resemble the military that these other ethnic groups went and became a part of. I don't know what the hell it is. No offense to those who are still in it, but if you are, you know what I'm talking about. This is not the military. Anybody, myself, who's been anybody, you can even recognize anymore. You're not even taught certain things that. It's sad too, because the military is like the most progressive, true progressive, not the fake use of the word, because the founders used the word progress to progressive all the time. They just didn't mean it in the same way that it's meant now when you hear it. And I'm telling you, by its true definition, the military is the most progressive institution in the United States of America, hands down. Racial, what economic, socioeconomic, whatever, you really do become green or whatever color. Sorry, army. Right? So you don't see in colors or races or creeds or income brackets or education levels or any of that. It's green. It's sad they wanted to, and probably have destroyed that. It's tragic. All right. Jewish about 2%. That's actually pretty damn close. 1.97. Wouldn't be surprised if it was 2.4. Maybe they get a little bit out of there. The Jewish population is not that big. Islamic is less than 1%. It's 0.85. So even if we were to put some of those unknowns in there, honestly, I think a lot of those unknowns are nuns, because we're seeing religion here, and I think you can only say marginally there are added, that quarter or almost 30% adds to the rest of these designations. I think the rise of the nun or no, with the religion. Religion, the nun category, like Andy, like Pastor Stanley always said, the rise of the nuns. That's a significant percentage now, at least 16%, which is what we usually. I mean, somebody can go and check it out, ballpark, where we had them. And actually, I'll check right now. Give me 1 second, I'll check it out. I'll see exactly what no religious affiliation was in our last poll. Let's find out. Fall. There you are. Go to crosstabs. Give me a second. Actually, noops. Variables. Sorry. My bad. Hold on. We're almost on the break anyway. I'm a little bit over,
and then
but
we're
I don't
gonna
care.
go over to something a little spicy.
Yeah, we're gonna get ready for a another one at the end of the week. Well, locals, you'll get it tomorrow.
Yeah.
But, the no religious affiliation. Wow, no religion was 20.8% in our last poll in the fall. Holy moly. Never mind. Which, yeah, I mean, look, I'm sure it's right. Protestant was 44.5. We have Protestants too low. I know that the exit polls always show like 44, 45%. They're too low, Laura. It's 46, 48. I really do believe that, because what these groups consistently who are underrepresented, they're, who are they? And what is their most likely religious affiliation? Protestantism.
Yeah.
See, you'll live and learn. Catholics were 24.2. That's too damn much. I'm serious. I mean, it's respectable. If you were like, Rich, I'm going to twist your arm, I'm dying to know. I don't see Catholics going from their 22% to a quarter routinely, even with immigration, because they're not recruiting. Catholics are not recruiting people in the United States. That's why they vehemently support illegal immigration. Because I'm sorry, if you're Catholic, I'm not trying to insult you at all. I was born and baptized. Well, I was born, raised Roman Catholic. I think I was baptized Roman Catholic again. I was baptized Greek Orthodox first, but I think I may have been baptized Roman Catholic after that, because it's like parents fighting. He's Italian. He's Greek. He's Italian. He's Greek. Right? I'm dunking the kid. I probably was dunked 100 times. You
got your own.
You guys, anyway. Listen. You Guineas from New York and Guineas like I am. You know what I'm talking about. An Italian man is, in my day, did not marry many Greek women, and vice versa. Right? So that must have been fun. But anyway, yeah, I don't see them increasing their share, because they're not recruiting domestically, and the population domestically is not growing. They're importing people for sure, but that is how much of that is being offset by the conversions of maturation and the rise of the nuns. So, right? So how can the Catholics really grow their ranks in the United States? Well, the amount of illegals that came over under Joe Biden is astronomical and unheard of. So maybe, Laura. I don't know. But for right now, I think we had a little high, 24.2. Jewish was 2.1. Muslim was 0.8. Right on the money with this. And another religion was 7.6. Which, by the way, in our national polling, we do notice the Church of Latter-day Saints, Mormons, pick another religion. Those we know of. They don't pick Protestant, other Christian. That's interesting to note. Maybe on national polls, we will start to add Mormon. And then when we create these variables, we'll just regroup. We'll create a regrouping variable, and it'll be, this is religion detail. We'll expand religion detail, and then we'll have regular religion, which is just like Protestant, other Christian, other, none, Jewish, Muslim, Catholic. Mm-hmm. Sound good? Sound good? All right. Because there's a ton of others. As you can see in this, Shinto, 0.2 of a percentage point. Lutheran, right? Sikh, Hindu, and on and on. Buddhist, 1.3. Yeah. All right. Let's move on. Actually, no. Let's take a break. Yes. Is there anything else? There is region I want to talk about when we come back. Then I want to talk about something else. All right? All right. All right. So we'll be back in 2 minutes flat inside the numbers with the People's Pundit. Let me just do my little spiel real quick. Represent.com/People's Pundit. Show accuracy matters. Get your shirt. I see some of you are getting your merch. I saw some posts. You got it before I did.
Yeah, you did.
I want my shirt for Friday.
Yes.
But I don't know what's going on. We'll see. But we rewrote them for some of you, and then you guys started getting yours, which is great. I would rather you guys get yours. Well, yes. Yeah, I'll get mine eventually, But they're cool, man. And we're going to start to offer some other stuff soon, too. Show that accuracy matters. Get the People's Pundit merch. All right. All right. There's hoodies, a regular sweatshirt, a hoodie sweatshirt, a V-neck t-shirt, and a collar t-shirt without a T. There are no T's, right? I said there was no T's. No, but there's no actual.
Oh, no pocket. No T pocket.
No, but yeah, because I don't like pockets. So it's like the lure. I'm like, no. Yeah, I mean, you have pockets on suit shirts. That's good enough, right? Hey, if you want to check out these voting models, you want to see the PDFs, we got more coming. You sign up, peoplespundit.locals.com. That's the best way to do it. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at @peoples_pundit. You can follow me on Getter at @peoplespundit. If you're watching on YouTube and you like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Smash the like button, as one of my loyal followers says. Smash the like button, hit the subscribe, of course, and hit that notification bell that will let you know when we're going to go live. Rumble, give it that little plus, of course, and subscribe. All right. We have to fix this. I just got to tell some people because they're like, where is it? There is this Rumble has got some stuff to work out. There is this add a Rumble channel. And then there's yourself. And we added People's Pundit. Make sure you're under the People's Pundit one and not the I just don't know. I don't know. It can go to both. We figured that out and have been for a while. Just streaming under the People's Pundit channel. I don't know. Rumble's weird like that, man. YouTube, you create a channel, you create a single channel. It's not your Google account, that can also post videos. Not unless you create a separate channel for your Google account. Some kinks to work out there. We want to just migrate the videos over from the prior and delete it. It's too confusing for people. I don't think I missed anything other than that, except for this. We'll be back in 2 minutes and 30 seconds with more Inside the Numbers. Here's Bad Habit. Bye.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
And take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Oh, that you know what? I was like, no, Laura, it's not Q&A time. But there were two questions that are really, they're good because they're related to the content. And if people need help understanding it, then I should cover it. But we're going to do that right now. But we're back inside the numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, People's Pundit, wishing everybody a happy and safe New Year coming up. Although we'll see you on New Year's Eve. All right. But great question, Jim. If I am a registered Democrat in a state with party affiliation, but I donated to Donald J. Trump, how do I show up? You show up as a registered Democrat. You do. Which is why I'm trying to tell you guys, to keep your minds open with how this really works out. Because really, in no world could these models in these polls, these assumptions, be correct. And that's interesting, Jim, you put that because there are basically things that tell us whether or not people who are either unaffiliated or third party are leaning one way or the other. And it's not even at this point plausible to say, well, we it's just self-affiliation. This is how I feel these voters affiliated, and we're not checking registration, so it could be that independents called themselves Democrats, and that's where we got inflated Democratic numbers. No, you didn't, because independents and third-party voters have shifted to the right. So you did not, unless your sample's too metro and urban. Then perhaps you did. Which means you're wrong. So in no universe is the national electorate more than D+4. Again, this is 197 million plus records. And it is true that Democratic registrations are not as sound. They're dirtier than Republican registrations. Why? Because urban centers are the primary causes of these problems on the voter files. I'm sorry, but it's true. Some of that is how they maintain their records, and some of that is simply a matter of population density. They are the primary drivers. In the state of Nevada, Clark County is 70% of the vote statewide, roughly, but it is more than 80% of the problematic voter records. It is disproportionately an urban Democratic controlled problem. Sorry. Mm-hmm. How does one know when a group achieves political maturation? Since the same groups vote different in different eras, are the several maturations. It's not so political maturation doesn't mean you started with one party and moved to another. It's more economic, socioeconomic status. It just so happens that when they undergo the process, that they tend to get more Republican. All right, that just has been the trends we have seen. The reason why you can't confuse some of these other groups, and we're looking directly at ethnic Catholics, but Asian groups, for instance, I imagine would not undergo the same changes. Some that they wouldn't do that because we're talking about different areas of the world. Maybe they will. Maybe they will. I'm just saying we haven't studied that yet. We don't know that yet. But the education factor in maturation that we're seeing, because it doesn't necessarily mean education either. It's really a socioeconomic status change. So you go from being poor in the inner city and part of the machine to being more independent, prosperous in the suburbs or other places, right? The suburbs, though, have been hit with like immigration, influxes of immigration from other parts of the world. Many of them are already educated when they get there. All right. Asia is the primary one right now, where years ago it was not true. We went over some of those in individual states like Virginia, going back to the 90s and the early 2000s. Primary immigration was not coming from Asian countries or even Latin American countries. It was coming from Europe. So we were still seeing certain ethnic Catholic groups and others, Italians and Spaniards, even Greek Orthodox or Eastern Orthodox is a little different, because even though many of them do come here and they're working class or poor, working class poor, working class middle, they tend though still to have those conservative values because they're Orthodox religions. So every group, I imagine, will be a little bit different. But looking at that ethnic Catholic group right now, it's really the process of starting out as an ethnic Catholic group that immigrated to the United States in bulk communities and urban centers, but then become more economically independent over a period of generations. And it just so happens that we see conversion rates when that goes on, and it just so happens that they become more Republican because of their change in status. All right. That both great questions, really good questions. And I hope that helped to explain that. Maybe after we're done here, we'll move over to other groups and see if that pattern holds. But the difference with these new Asian immigration waves is that many of them, they may come here for education, or they come here with an education, but they're not coming here with religious values or or American values. I'm sorry, it's just true. There's I'm not.
People came here
Look,
for
the
American...
end. Right. Well, right. The previous waves in the 90s and early 2000s, from the 80s to early 2000s, of Chinese immigrants, for instance, came here. They were the Tiananmen Square generation. All right. Now they're the Communist Party isn't radical but pragmatist generation. Very different. And anybody who has any recent experience, I would say from 2005 on in academia, you can't argue with it. You know what I'm talking about. And especially over the last 10 years. They're not coming here to get away from, the oppressive communist regime. That they don't believe that anymore. They believe that their regime is pretty much pragmatic and doing a pretty good job. They're not run by ideologues anymore. That's what they will tell. That's what they will tell you, what they believe. They are not coming here with this American ideal. They're not, Joel really, I hate to say it, but the Harvard professor who was caught spying during the pandemic for China, he lied about money he was getting. He was connected to the Wuhan lab, everything. He was just sentenced a little bit ago, a week or two ago. At the time, before the pandemic, at the time, somewhere, I want to say it was 18, 19. I could go look it up on it was probably 18. I can go look it up on PPD because we covered it. We were basically the only ones who did. The Trump administration had basically found a bunch of spies, and they charged these two guys with espionage. The Justice Department basically released a report It was more of a report than a statement. And it said, really the number one threat right now is not Russia. It's not some external nation state actor. It's a nation state, but it's not the actions of a nation state. It's the using of our education and academic institutions for spying. And then they go into our corporate world, and it's espionage, corporate espionage, and spying, and it's China. And it's a major, widespread problem in America right now. Nobody cared because we were still in the Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cared to cover it. But it was absolutely what the Department of Justice was saying. And by the way, it's a joint task force. So it's not just DOJ's counterintel, the FBI's counterintel unit. We're working with other people. Russia was not the threat. And we wasted 4 years terrified of a straw man while the real danger was in the classroom with our children. While the real danger was in our academic institutions. While the real danger was using our higher education institutions to get the skills they needed to make their country stronger.
Mm-hmm.
To go back and steal our intellectual property and take it home or send it home. The problem was deep, folks. And that is what we should have that is what we should have spent those 4 years on instead of wasting it over a lie. A lie.
Wasting our money over and over.
Our attention.
Mm-hmm.
We wasted our attention, our efforts, our energy on a lie because they didn't like a president.
Mm-hmm.
Understand the neocon, neoliberal alliance with corporate America and the media. They screwed you, man. They screwed us all. They put their personal beef against a man ahead of the security of this country. So much so that one of the leading pushers of the Russia hoax was sleeping with a Chinese spy while he was on the intelligence community. On the intelligence committee. Eric Swalwell, one of the biggest pushers, he himself.
Preach it.
I could say, make really, because Rich off camera would make some really dirty, funny jokes right now. But Rich on camera is not going to do it. And it's too serious, honestly, to joke about.
So. Yes.
This is a man who is a leading proponent of a fake hoax that benefited China, compromised by a Chinese spy. And he is a leading Democratic lawmaker. He had access to ridiculously sensitive information. He wasted the time of the House Intelligence Committee on nonsense, along with his chairman after 18. But the two of them worked together to basically thwart Devin Nunes from doing his real job. Because the real job of the Intelligence Committee is not to work with the intelligence community to push a hoax, misinformation campaign on the American public and distract them from real threats. Their real job is to conduct oversight of the intelligence community, which is dangerous in its own right, with unfettered power, and make sure that they are doing the job that is necessary to protect the American people without abusing their power. That is the job of the Intelligence Committee, both House and Senate. And instead, both of them use their positions, use their power to help the intelligence community misdirect you. While China basically just ran around unabated all over our soil. Then they infected the world with a virus. Knowingly or unknowingly, it doesn't really matter. Although I don't believe in coincidences.
Neither do I.
Leak, intentional, it doesn't really matter. Had somebody been paying attention to what the hell was going on in Wuhan, millions of people would still be alive. Don't you find it funny that nobody has called for this country to pay any kind of restitution or atone for the death of millions of people that they killed around the world? Do you think if Vladimir Putin's Russia accidentally leaked, do you think the world would have come to his rescue with a fake story about a bat in a wet market?
No.
Do you think they would let Vladimir Putin and the oligarchs around him slide? No. That should tell you everything you need to know about
who really is
who,
the threat.
right,
Mhm.
who is the threat and who, unfortunately, the people who are tasked to protect us and represent our interests are really getting whipped by.
Mhm.
Aloha. Saw that corner man. Aloha. Oh, it's got to be beautiful there right now.
From Hawaii.
I got to tell you, it's pretty hot here.
Yeah.
Oh my God, global warming. Shut up. 6 weeks ago, it was freezing before in like early fall.
But
It's just
anyway,
crazy. Missy Wong said Chinese people generally do not apologize for anything.
No, as long as they say face, that's all that matters.
Saving face. They did say face though.
Yeah, they did. They
did say face.
and they made us look.
People don't
stupid.
know what we're talking about.
Oh, sorry.
It's the concept of saving face is a big deal in politics and in business negotiations. Very big deal when it comes to the Chinese. Americans don't know anything. Our diplomatic counterparts are incompetent when it comes to dealing with
Yes, they
China.
are.
They know nothing about the Chinese motivation, their capacity to wait us out, both in negotiations and in long-term, security policy, security strategy. They're stupid. We have no long telegraph. We have no equivalent of the long telegraph, like George Kennan gave the U.S. administration to help us understand the Russian people during the Cold War. There's no equivalent of that now. And I'm not saying there aren't people out there who could give us the long telegraph guidance for China. But there are, in fact.
But
they're just not listened to.
Mhm.
Because the foreign policy establishment is either A, corrupted by them, or B, freaking stupid.
Well, that one piece of advice we heard will last with me forever. Never assume the people in the position actually know what they're doing just because they're in that position.
I just want to say, because I just saw, I didn't say I wanted the government to offer Americans a health care plan.
Where'd you see that?
Maybe you misinterpreted what I said about them attempt to repeal and replace Obamacare. If you make a promise to voters, 7 years, 7-year promise that you're going to repeal and replace Obamacare, you have to do it. But no, in a perfect world, I don't want government to do with anything. Listen, personally, you want to know my personal situation? I'll tell you. I'm a veteran, and I do have a disability rating, though I don't think it's anybody's business.
No.
But it's enough for them to say they give me health care when they really don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm banned from the healthcare marketplace. I'm not allowed to purchase private insurance. Business insurance or through the business can offer insurance to employees, but I can't have it myself. I can't stand government healthcare because I was a veteran who knew what government healthcare was before anybody else did. Being insured, on paper, is not the same thing as having coverage. And governments like to say this percentage of the population is insured, but they don't really distinguish or differentiate between being covered. The VA now again blows under Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
We're right back to where we started, even though they have powers to do something about it. They just, attitudinally, I'm talking about. You could see the attitude of VA employees who are supposed to be serving veterans change almost immediately after Donald Trump left office because they were no longer afraid of being held accountable. Now, I'm not talking just about managerial positions either. Supervisor roles. I'm talking that is the reality. If you are a veteran, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Try to get the community care now. Under Donald Trump, if you couldn't find a specialist or whatever it is that you needed in your general area, or the VA could not provide it to you on a timely basis, it was very easy to get community care, which is you need to pay. I'm going to a private doctor who can provide this care for me, and you're going to pay for it. Under Donald Trump, after he passed that bill, that paperwork went through with the quickness. Now they're fighting you. Unless you are very fortunate to live in certain areas like our area in Gainesville, the attitudes aren't much better. Don't get me wrong. But the care, you have a facility right there. Florida's fantastic compared to the rest of the country. And I hear as well, we used to do an annual survey on veterans, but Texas apparently as well was pretty good. But just about everywhere else, you're spoiled if you live around these facilities in these states, because everywhere else it blows. I really like co-ops and stuff. I mean, I'm looking at how the actuaries work and how they come up with these risk, factors.
Mhm.
I don't really think government can run healthcare. Not good healthcare. I just don't think it's possible. A strong economy fixes a lot of problems, and healthcare is one of them. Moving on. Let's see. Let me just say real quick before we move on to my other spicy section. I'm trying to find my thing. Right. By region, you can tell how much the South has grown. 37.7%, which in our poll regionally, the South was 38%. Wow. Good for us. Good for us. The Northeast, 17.7%. We had it at 17. Wow, Laura, we're dead on here. The Midwest was 22.46 or 22.5, round up to 23. We had it at 23%. So obviously the West is going to be dead on too at 22%. Now, I do want to say though that you will see, and that's how you know the modeling is going to be, generally speaking, fairly accurate. 21.97. Come on, it's 22. When you do some of these more matches, these generally change somewhat, but not much. I did notice in the midterm electorate, the Northeast did fall a little bit, but it still rounds up to about where we had it, 17% on the poll. It just will fall 17.7 or 17.78 here. It will fall, I believe, to around 16.6 or 16.8 in the midterm electorate. That is, the most liberal area of the country. The Northeast is economically depressed and not growing at all in population. So once upon a time, it was the economic engine of the world. I mean, it was the economic engine of the country. Once upon a time, it won the Civil War. Now it's just a dump. I'm sorry, and I'm from the Northeast, so I don't mean to insult anybody, but there's a reason why I left. It has been mismanaged to the point of almost no return. And I don't know what to tell you. It's sad, but they were one of the most, aside from the Midwest, regions of the country where both national policy, which like trade policy, really hurt them because it really screwed over domestic workers and business, and also state level policy with taxation and regulation. It's just a double whammy. And it's tragic. Really is tragic. He said, this is weird. He's answering as I type. Yeah, I mean, it was a double whammy, Razor. It really was, and it's sad because, when I was growing up, I remembered if you had a hard time finding some work, or you needed seasonal or whatever it may be, you could always go down to this manufacturing plant that was near me. It wasn't a plant, manufacturing company where they did like storm doors and windows and all sorts of other stuff. I mean, that's a perfect example of, trade policy wiping them out because certain goods really just were given, other countries were given preferred status. We agreed to buy a certain amount of certain materials, and it just was not, you couldn't pay a domestic worker $12 on the line anymore an hour. You just couldn't do it. And then, there were just people working for a bowl of rice doing the same thing on the other side of the world. So really sad, but they killed it, you know? All right, so what is Joe Biden saying? Anything else?
No.
222,000 deaths. Right. Didn't you hear? There is no federal government solution to COVID. He ran on the whole damn premise. I'm going to shut down the virus. 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 I'm going to shut down the economy. I'm going to shut down the virus. Oh, my God. I honestly have to ask you never Trump idiots out there, how stupid do you feel right now? Honestly, do some of you mediaites as well, did you really believe that? Because some of you, let's be honest, I know you're ideological and you did all that crap on purpose, but you really did believe it, right? You believed Joe Biden was going to better handle the pandemic than Donald Trump. Even though he was thrown off the H1N1 task force for incompetence by your savior, Barack Obama, you really did. But don't lie now. Don't lie. You really did believe it, didn't you? Oh, you silly, stupid little fools.
Fools, I tell you.
Silly little bit. I muted it. Silly little, Oh, boy.
You know they're crying.
Because they did.
Space.
They were doing it for ideologically corrupt reasons, but they really believe it. Like some of these White House press corps people, they are stunned. Like, oh, yeah, don't know what you have to say about this.
They swore he would have the answer.
You are a bunch of supposedly educated idiots. You really are a bunch of supposedly educated simpletons. I mean, don't you notice that every time you get your way, things don't work out?
And then you come begging Republicans and conservatives
honestly,
for the help.
Honest to God, didn't you?
Don't
you see a pattern here? Did you really think a president of the United States was going to have the power to control a viral particle? New Year's resolution tip for you. Here's a little suggestion. Something like this. I promise, or I will try hard, not to be a stupid, gullible idiot anymore. I promise, or I will try really hard, not to be blinded by ideology that they make me look like a horse's ass. I promise to try to look at numbers a little bit closer next time. I mean,
actually,
all right,
don't look at their numbers. Look at Rich's numbers.
Speaking of which, let's talk. I'm going to do this a little differently. All right. Oh, by the way, hat tip to this guy. This is always a funny one. Build Back Better is dead.
Yeah.
It's not. Let me just answer that. It's not coming back. And it's funny somebody brought that up before because I actually loaded this up the other day and never used it. It's not for George and Peter too. I was going to give them to him, but it's not coming back in the new year. This is how elections work. People will start to pivot to their primaries. They will try to raise as much money as possible, and they are going to try to do what they can to keep the House. They are not now going to try to push a bill that they know is unpopular, but it doesn't matter anyway because lawmakers in that final year before an election do the bare minimum to actually do their job. This is one of the broken parts of our government. They govern for a year, guys, after an election, and then they go right back to campaign mode. And they really do the bare minimum to get by, to keep the government basically, running. They'll push their own little pet projects here and there, but they normally will not take on massive legislative changes like this that cause dramatic change. But also, too, they're not going to do it because inflation is going to be a major problem for Democrats this election. They already lost the battle. Joe Manchin stuck a knife in it. The Joe Manchin. He's down.
I love it.
Somebody sent me that on Twitter, man. Hat tip to you. That was awesome. All right, but I'm going to try to do this. There's a new study out. I'm basically not going to say a lot of words. There's a new study out. I'm going to drop it in the box here, actually. Hold on.
And just remember, we are on Rumble as well.
We're on Rumble, so go to Rumble. As a matter of fact, hold on.
Yeah, drop the link.
I'm going to drop the link.
I could have done that.
Yeah, I know. Alternative Rumble link.
Just
Just in case. All right. So I will have to see. You know what? I'll probably send this study out. Yeah, there's not much to talk with to Harry Reid. You know, my grandmother used to say, Richie, if you don't have something nice to say about somebody, don't say it at all. I'm not going to be like those scumbags on social media, you know, who do that stuff. I just, you know, generally speaking, I have not much to say. I do have one thing nice to say. Thank you for getting ATIP rolling. The Advanced Aerospace Threat Assessment Program. That's it. That's all I got to say. At least he had the goal.
Want to be him on Judgment Day.
I just would not want to be Harry Reid going to no.
No, thank you.
No way. I was going to pull the old video of then Representative Harry Reid attacking illegal immigrants on the floor of the U.S. House and saying patently, just
lies.
No. He was telling the truth.
When
he was so-called moderate Democrat in the 90s in the House, and he was anti-immigrant. Mm-hmm. He said they will destroy the jobs of the working man and woman in the country. He said that Hispanics would be bad for the state of Nevada. And bad immigration overall is bad for his industry. Mm-hmm. Until the unions realized that their membership was crap and they needed to import service union members. So then that changed. So incredibly. Where is it? Tell me. I didn't know. Here it is. I wonder if I drop this in there, if it's going to cause something. You know what I mean? I'm going to try not to do it. All right. So I'm going to send you this link. It's a study, all right?
Yeah.
Increases in COVID-19 are unrelated to levels of vaccinations across 68 countries, 2,947 counties in the United States. In fact, I just want to say that, and maybe if I just say it in a nice voice and say it really fast in a nice voice, that they won't have a problem, you know? But in fact, the reality is that certain people who are supposed to be not wearing the Jewish star on their chest because they're the good people who obeyed, actually have higher infection rates. All right. So I'm just going to read that. And with that, I'm just going to play this real quick. Okay. I'm just going to play it. I didn't do it.
20 years ago, and it was for any vaccine that we wanted to make. You would say a vaccine from the time you start to the time it's approved to be safe and effective is several years, 5, 6, 7 years. That's unacceptable for now. So what happened is that as soon as we got the sequence of the virus from the Chinese, we pulled it out of the public database and stuck the gene into a vaccine platform and worked on it literally within a day of when it came out. 65 days later, namely 2 days ago, we gave the first injection to a normal volunteer for a phase 1 trial to see if it's safe. That's the fastest that's ever been done. That's the good news. The challenging news is that even at that rocket speed, it's going to take a few months to show that the initial safety is okay. Then you go into a phase 2 trial, which instead of involving 45 people, which we have in the phase 1 trial, it involves hundreds, if not thousands of people. That will take another 6 to 8 months to even know if it works. So at the fastest we can go, it's going to take a year to a year and a half to know if we have a vaccine that we can use. There's another element to safety, and that is if you vaccinate someone and they make an antibody response and then they get exposed and infected, does the response that you induce actually enhance the infection and make it worse? And the only way you'll know that is if you do an extended study, not in a normal volunteer who has no risk of infection, but in people who are out there in a risk situation. This would not be the first time, if it happened, that a vaccine that looked good in initial safety actually made people worse. There was the history of the respiratory syncytial virus vaccine in children, which paradoxically made the children worse. One of the HIV vaccines that we tested several years ago actually made individuals more likely to get...
Do I have to say anything? Do I actually have to add to that? I don't think so. I don't see anything wrong with playing the video clip. Do I actually have to add to it? I don't think so. I just give you that link. Check it out. Read it. I will just say this. How do you think we beat the New York Times on the EUA dates? How did you think we beat the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal on treatments, on full authorizations? And I'm telling you from the jump, that is the common language before. And from what I understand, Twitter has suspended the account of Dr. Malone just a little bit ago. Dr. Robert Malone, who is an inventor of these things. Is that permanent? Does anybody know if that's permanent or just a suspension?
I'm getting the. I already put that up.
Because
It says account suspended right now.
okay. And Trump took a risk on this. He took a risk on it. And I strongly suspect, like I told Peter and George on Monday, somebody's telling him, you're way ahead, like unprecedented ahead. By the way, I saw some internal polling the other day. Trump had a 6-point lead in Pennsylvania over a 6 against Biden, and just like ridiculous leads against a bunch of other potentials. There was Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris. But he's taking a risk here, ladies and gentlemen. If something goes wrong here, don't think for a second that they won't all of a sudden do a 180 and say it was all Donald Trump's fault.
Of course they are.
But you say, Rich, well, how could they do it? They've invested so much in this now. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard out of the mouth himself. That was the common language. What Dr. Malone, no doubt, has been suspended for. His view on the potential downside related to this specific thing was the common view. It is what developers told the Trump White House could happen, told the National Institute of Health, told the Federal the Food and Drug Administration.
Which they ignored.
No, they did. They just said, well, thank you, but keep going anyway, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
No, but you remember when...
Now, it does sound like with this particular clip, Laura,
Yes.
they were aware. Not only did they... It wasn't that we'll cross the bridge when we get there, that it was intentional. Because as he just said, you wouldn't know. In fact, the only way is to what? Not a normal, but a what? And again, I'm trying to listen to what he said right there. And I'll put it on locals. That's a new and improved version because somebody said this is like a stable version. That is something they were told. And they took that information and decided on this course of action, knowing full well that was the case. And they took, basically, they played Russian roulette.
They sure did. And used humans as guinea pigs.
And we're in a time frame now. Right now. Think about what he said and put it into context. And then compare that to what you were told from everybody right now. It's stunning. Stunning. It's amazing how this man says one thing in emails. He says one thing, in a private Zoom call with his colleagues, and says another publicly. This guy is dangerous. This guy will go down in history very unfavorably.
That's for sure.
And I'm just telling you, Yeah, the Big Pharma hated Donald Trump because he was on a mission to basically provide lower cost drugs. And, one of the most disappointing, saddest displays of political cowardice I witnessed during the Trump administration was when Elijah Cummings buckled to Democratic leadership on the plan to lower the cost of prescription drugs, which Trump then did, including insulin, which Joe Biden reversed, which included, Elijah Cummings was a major part of it. He met with the president. They spoke. They were on the same page. They were very hopeful. They were very optimistic, more than hopeful and optimistic. Elijah Cummings was stoked that there was finally a president who was serious about doing it. Now, obviously, one's a Republican, one's a Democrat. They had differences on what was the best way to lower prescription drug costs. But that is how the sausage is made in Washington, D.C. And Elijah Cummings was told to back off, to not to do it, because we're not giving Donald Trump any wins. They put Big Pharma and their own politics ahead of you, ahead of all of us. And they, it's just easier to do it. The number of lobbyists on K Street, I think people really do need to understand how much money these drug companies stuff in the pockets of both parties. Both parties, not just one. The sad thing with Elijah Cummings is he did not have a record of succumbing to that lobby. And he really did want to do something. But he put the party above his own politics, above his own principles, and all in the name of denying Donald Trump a legislative win. He tabled it. Or he didn't even get to, he basically abandoned the effort. And somebody like an Elijah Cummings could have been pivotal, ladies and gentlemen, if Trump worked with Elijah Cummings to craft a bill to lower prescription drug costs. You better damn believe that bill was going to pass. Because not enough Republicans would have went against Donald Trump in the House, and not enough Democrats would have went against Elijah Cummings in the House to stop that bill. It would have passed with overwhelming bipartisan support in the lower chamber, at which point it would have went to the Senate. And a Republican bare majority in the Senate would never have been able to stop that. Not unless they wanted to look like the evil,
Mm-hmm.
I just saw Carlos in my Carlos. I think Texas is going to be an even big, at this point, if it was right now, it would be an even bigger margin than in 2020. There are more Hispanics just moving every day. You're going to get some of that Anglo vote to shift back because they are revolting against the Democratic platform. And you're probably looking at like a 10-point margin in Texas right now. And it's amazing because Texas, if you look at the census, accounted for a large percentage of overall, because we didn't have domestic population growth, but overall population growth. Who drove that? Dallas has two of the biggest Texas has two of the biggest metro areas in the country of driving population, and they simply didn't do. The margin almost was identical. So again, it's just another one of those things, another one of those data points that just don't make sense. Just doesn't make sense. Take the time and read that study. Okay. Now the article has been updated, Seer, but I will read one little piece. We used data provided by Our World in Data for cross-country analysis, as available as September 3rd, 2021. We included 68 countries that met the following criteria: had second dose available, had case data available, had population data available, and the last update of data was within 3 days prior. For the 7 days preceding, we computed the case per 1 million people for each country, as well as the percentage of population that was fully juiced. Okay, that was fully Fauci juiced. Amazingly, at the same time, Israel hailed for its swift and high rates of juicing. They saw a substantial resurgence. In fact, when you look at it, let me get to the main thing here. The trend line suggests a marginally positive association with higher percentages of a population juiced that have higher cases per 1 million. So in other words, we saw Good Morning Britain and all these other people and, all these domestic in the U.S. Forces use Omicron as another way to scare people who hadn't yet been juiced without evidence of whether or not it was even effective. And sadly, I mean, that is the dominant strain now. I believe it's about 70% in the United States of new infections is Omicron. And it simply is no effect. In fact, what is really now a concern is what you just heard out of Dr. Fauci's mouth before. Can it make things... Some tiptoeing here, but you know what I'm saying. And it's tragic. Irrational fear gets populations in mass to do things they would otherwise never do. 9/11, everybody after 9/11 thought that it was the wise move was to give the federal government the Patriot Act.
That was a foolish...
Yep.
And
that
I lost
fear,
somebody in 9/11, and I still thought that was stupid.
Yeah, Laura lost somebody.
I mean,
many of us did, but a family member.
What's in the second
Very dear.
tower?
And people didn't stop to think, and that irrational fear can last a really long time.
And don't be a fool. The government will use a crisis in a heartbeat to tread on your
that's
freedoms.
their primary strategy. That's the primary playbook. And I'm wondering how much longer this can last and how much damage is going to be done. Because unfortunately, going back to China, not everybody is taking this approach. And if this turns out to be the case, then they did us in without even firing a shot.
Yeah.
Look at what we did to our military, the requirements we imposed on our military. How effective will they be now? How combat effective will they be? If next year something more deadly than Omicron with resistance comes in.
Who knows? Maybe the next variant will be Bumblebee.
No, I mean, sadly though, Laura, this will continue.
This will continue.
The variants will continue,
Yes.
and what I'm hopeful for at this point, and I don't even know if it's scientifically possible because it's not my field of study. I'd ask Dr. Malone, but they suspended him. Is it possible this could speed up the variant creation process and then wipe it off the map? Is that possible? Because that is not a scenario that anybody has seriously brought forward. I'm just, at this point, wishful thinking. And this fear can get you to make these mistakes, man. And some mistakes are worse than others.
Hysteria can create a lot of...
You can't repeal this. You can't reform this like you can reform the Patriot Act, like you can repeal the Patriot Act. You can dissolve the Department of Homeland Security if you had the political will to do it. This mistake or potential mistake cannot be repealed.
And the monsters
you have permanently altered. That's what I'm saying.
The monsters
you have permanently created a vulnerability in yourself. That's what he was saying. If it's the case, and well, no, I'm serious. We just don't know. One study is one study. I'd like to see more. But sadly, it's like you see these APs and fact checkers and all these people just run out there and they're like, it's all experts are. They don't. And the actual material, the data in the literature that we keep reading does not support what they are saying.
Mm-hmm.
It does not.
No.
All right, locals, I got a heart out. Check me out on Gruber in 5 minutes. All right. Everyone, check me out on Gruber in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
but I got a heart out, and locals, I'll see you tomorrow. Well, you'll see me in a bit, but we're going to go over another one tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And then Friday on New Year's Eve, I know everyone's probably got plans. We'll do during the day in the late morning, early afternoon. That's the usual time. All right. We'll talk to Don. We'll get his thoughts as long as he's still available. I think he said he was, right? We'll go over that one. Yeah, take some questions on it. Because there's a lot of, I understand, terms in there that are difficult to understand. There were some really good questions that really were great. Even if you understand the basic parameters, you still ask some really good questions. And we'll continue that on Friday. Just remember, takeaway here, there is no universe where the electorate is D+9. All right, so when your eyebrows should be right in the air when you see those polls. It's just not possible. 197 million plus records, D+4. All right. Again, we appreciate your time, as always, your support, and we'll be here as long as you are. And that's right. That's right. Telling the truth until the day we leave this earth. All the best, folks. If we don't see you sometime before New Year's Eve because you don't, watch one, please be safe. All right. As always, it's great to celebrate. I like to party, but you got to do so safe and responsibly. And I hope everybody does that. All right. Leaving you with the Bowen Band. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Hit that like button. Smash that like button. That thumbs up. Right? Hit the bell that'll notify you when we're going to go live. Rumble, of course. The plus. Subscribe. Want these PDFs? Want all this other stuff that we goes out to the locals community? peoplespundit.locals.com. More voter analysis coming inside the numbers with the People's Pundit.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette.